today. And, well, how is it used usually?
Get to work, buddy.
Yeah, get to work. Work hard, and put your heart into it. But I was looking up. We were trying to figure out, well, what does that mean? And we were debating whether it means it's going.
Yep.
We're talking about put your nose to the grindstone. What that means. Hello, Facebook friends. And we were debating whether it's the millstone, like from a miller doing it, grinding wheat, or like a tool sharpener or knife sharpener on a grindstone.
I vote for tool, knife.
And actually both theories have been put forth, but the tool theory is much stronger, because normally the saying would probably be put your nose to the millstone if it was about the grinding wheat thing. I mean, there was a theory that, there was this water mill thing, and if they didn't have it adjusted right, it could burn the wheat. I don't really understand how that works, and then the miller would smell if it was burning and something was wrong, or cooking the wheat, whatever. But put your nose to the grindstone. You can find old pictures of, like, it'll be this dank warehouse, all dusty and gray, and this is like, I don't know, probably around 1900 or something. And then guys laying on these boards in their, coveralls with worn holes and everything, laying on these boards face down with a big grindstone spinning and sharpening tools. And sometimes they were even strapped down. I don't know why. It sounds kind of oppressive, but sometimes it's used kind of in a punishment type of way too, like, put your nose to the grindstone. You're being bad.
Don't fall off the board.
Maybe. Yeah, hope for the best. Yeah, that they're not like, you haven't done your 16 hours yet. No bathroom break. But they'd lay on these boards facing down with their nose, right by the wheel, grinding tools all day. And they were encouraged to bring their dogs to work because apparently it was cold. They weren't heating the building or something. So the dogs would lay between their legs and keep them warm while they worked.
It reminds me of a 3-dog night. In Australia, if it's really, really cold, you have 3 dogs, one on either side and one on top of you.
Oh, keep you warm.
Oh, wow.
There was a story of a missionary I heard who he had his dogs so well trained that he'd bring the lamp to his master from home. He'd walk 3 miles to get to the train station where this guy would meet him, and the dog would put the lamp in his mouth and bring it all the way to him so he could have light on his way home after he got off the train.
That's a good dog.
Yeah, I want a dog like that.
I feel like the dog can probably
Why didn't he
see.
just bring the light with him?
Yeah. Think about it in the morning.
Okay, let's get to Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 3. Okay, so, I don't know, there was quite a bit in chapter 2 about Isaiah's vision of the coming kingdom, and also, like, he was talking about how Mount Zion will be made the greatest mountain, and the nations will come there to worship Messiah. But he also is warning that judgment is coming to Judah, and these people aren't humble. They're proud. They're haughty. They're arrogant. And I think chapter 3 is going to be about why the judgment is coming. And the pericope here says, national disintegration of Jerusalem and Judah through sin. And, well, what's the coming judgment historically? Anyone recall?
They're taken off into captivity.
Right. During Isaiah's time, the northern kingdom, that's quite a few chapters ahead, but it's going to be taken off into captivity. but he's warning Judah about the Babylonian captivity that he's, he writes before that happens. I don't think he's one of the ones that goes into captivity. He's a pre-exile prophet. Verse 1, for behold, the Lord, the Yahweh of hosts, what does hosts mean?
Armies.
Armies, like angelic armies, takes away from Jerusalem and from Judah the stock and the store, the whole supply of bread, the whole supply of water. This is what it's going to be like. Well, I think this is one of those, probably, we have to be discerning here, but dual fulfillments of prophecy, where he's talking about the conditions during or just before and during the Babylonian invasion, and also what the conditions are going to be like during the tribulation period, when it's not Babylon but Antichrist. Wasn't it? Yeah, Nebuchadnezzar. Verse 2, so what does this mean? They're going to be,
Famine?
yeah, having a famine. No, their stores of food and provisions, water and bread and grain are gone. That's what it's going to be like. There's more. Verse 2, the mighty man and the man of war, the judge and the prophet, and the diviner and the elder. I believe he's saying they're going to be gone too. They're going to be destroyed. The strong men, the soldier type, man of war, the judge and the prophet, the leaders, the ones who help with justice and the telling God's will, and the diviner and the elder. The diviner, another translation said fortune teller, and the elder, which of course Israel shouldn't even have fortune tellers in their midst. They learned that from the pagans, from the Philistines and Assyrians and Canaanites and Hittites, different groups. Verse 3, the captain of 50 and the honorable man, so this is like a leader in the military, and the honorable man, the counselor and the skillful artisan. Another translation said magician. And I don't know, I think of totally different things when I think of skillful artisan versus musician. But maybe the idea in common is the word craft. They both have a craft, but one's witchcraft and one's craftsmanship.
I've heard that in the past, people that worked metal were often thought of as doing magical stuff. That it was such a kept so close to the how to make metal.
Could have been connected to idols too, because you have golden calves in the New Testament. You have the silversmiths who, were losing their jobs, so they decided to get together.
Oh well, yeah. There's a connection. There's a artisan who makes idols. So.
Well, I was thinking more of a bronze maker. You take copper and tin, and put them together, melt them together at certain proportions, and you get bronze, which is much harder than either one of them. And it's close to magic, in what they would think. Yeah,
metallurgy was pretty cool, but actually it started way early on in the book of Genesis. One of Adam's sons or grandsons started it.
Yeah.
And they were really smart, and they lived a long time too to figure out these things.
He could probably figure out a lot.
Genetically almost perfect. And then the next thing is related. I didn't have time to look up the Hebrew word on the previous one. My suspicion is that it could be translated either way. And the expert enchanter, or the necromancer, the HCSB says, which is...
Isn't that like raising the dead?
Clearly it's influence from the Lord of the Rings on the HCSB. Well, the bad guy, the Sauron was called the necromancer, which he was a witch, a sorcerer. And so necromancer, I think the idea is contacting the dead, is one who communicates with
It's
the
controlling
dead.
the dead.
Yeah, I think that's like bringing them, animating them, basically.
Remember, the Witch of Endor was asked to bring back the spirit of Elijah, I think it was by...
Or,
Samuel, because
Samuel.
yeah.
the spirit of Samuel by Saul.
Yeah.
Saul. And she's like, hey, you said witches aren't allowed. I don't see any witches here. And he's like, don't worry about it. You won't get any trouble. And has her do it. And then she's shocked that he actually does come. I think God sent him. And of course, he wasn't too happy about it. Samuel being sent back. He liked where he was with God in heaven or in paradise. Verse 4, I will give children to be their princes, and babes shall rule over them. See, that's one of the signs of a society going down the toilet is the children are running the show. Everyone thinks children are more important than the adults. The children are dictating what the adults do.
Or because there's a lack of, for instance, there's a lack of suitable heirs to the throne because they're all dying off or getting killed off, and so then the next heir to the throne is a child.
And what do children have a lot of? What characteristic?
Selfishness.
Yes, selfishness, foolishness. Foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction will drive it far from him.
You know, it was so interesting. Toyota has made a habit of raising up their CEOs to be like not letting the children run it until they get to a certain age, and they're on their third generation CEO of the Toyota family. And it was interesting what he said. He said, like, I've heard all my life that the third generation is the generation that screws things up. And he's just like, not with me. He's like, I made a promise when I was like 5 years old, and like
Maybe
people
the
told me
fourth
that.
generation, because I don't know about my kids. But. Yeah, and what are they lacking that older people are supposed to have?
Discipline,
Elders.
maturity, experience.
Forebrain development.
Yeah, wisdom and experience. So this is a curse. He's talking about a cursed state, a state of judgment they'll be under, and this is one of the characteristics. All the leaders and stuff have been killed off, and all that's left to rule them is young people. 5, the people will be oppressed, everyone by another, and everyone by his neighbor. It's like a tattletale society. Instead of
be
helping
written out.
neighbors, oppressing them, turning them in, accusing them of things.
I have to report you for what you did.
What, Paul?
So this could be what we find in our current situation.
Yeah, people always ask, where's American prophecy? I'm like, well, this is talking about Judah, but it sure sounds like America.
Yeah.
The child will be insolent, arrogant and backsassing, correcting adults all the time. The children will be insolent toward the elder, and the base, the worthless, toward the honorable.
Is this talking about
The riots in Portland? Yes, it is.
Is this talking about the children in Judah, or is this talking about like the Babylonian people?
It's a situation in Judah that leads them into being taken captive.
Okay.
Yeah, look back at verse 1. For behold, the Lord, the Yahweh of armies, takes away from Jerusalem and from Judah. And then here's the list. This is what you lose for being disobedient, for being rebellious to me, and not being faithful, not following wanting to follow other religions and well, it'll get into some of the immorality that they were into as well.
Wasn't King Josiah a young king too? The last.
Yeah, King Josiah was a young king, and he was a very good king. He was one of the few good ones.
Yeah,
And,
his.
there's an exception to the rule there, I guess. But this is...
But he also had the flaw of he was told not to fight Pharaoh.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then-
Yeah, that's why he died. I
Yeah,
think.
and then he got killed off. But I wonder if that was the generation that got put into
And I think that was probably one of those circumstances where he wasn't listening to the elders.
captivity.
It's like, oh, I think I'll get the advice from my peers, from the young people.
It's kind of like,
I'm
what was
good.
it? Solomon's son, when he went to the elders, and they said, loosen the yoke around.
Yeah, it was Jeroboam or Rehoboam, I
Yeah.
think. And it's like, yeah, if you just ease up on the taxes, we'll serve you wholeheartedly. And he's like, no! Well, he listened to the young people instead of the elders.
Yeah.
And he said, my pinky is like my father's waist, and I'm going to double the taxes. Type it. Just stinky attitude sent him away. Angry, and what'd they do? Take up arms. Divided the kingdom. Verse 6, a gentle answer turns away wrath, or even just a reasonable answer. Verse 6, when a man takes hold of his brother in the house of his father, saying, you have clothing, you be our ruler, and let these ruins be under your power. So we've got a pile of rubble here that you can rule over. The whole city's been demolished and rubble, but you're the only one that's not naked, so you're our ruler. That's like what fine clothing used to be like. It's like you have any clothing at all, you're wealthy and prominent.
My dad got upset watching Western movies where people are just like, clothes, these are useless. And he's just like, no, if you had clothes back then, you were rich.
Clothes were useless.
Or-
Why were they stealing boots whenever someone would die?
Yeah, well, they would like throw away the clothes and take the guy's money in a lot of these
Oh,
Western movies where it's just
yeah.
like,
Right.
no, the clothes are worth just as much as the money.
Right, it would take them forever to hand make a deerskin jacket or something.
Yeah.
That was like weeks of work. Verse 7, in that day he will protest, saying, I cannot cure your ills, for in my house is neither food nor clothing. Do not make me a ruler of the people. So the guy with some, that's better clothes or some clothes at all, doesn't even want to be their ruler. It's not
Because then people are going to ask him for stuff.
yeah, it's not a privilege. It's not a desirable position during this time.
Especially with all the countries wanting to come in and
Yeah, we're all in rubble. It's like now you've got to cure all our problems and save us and protect us.
And everybody's like, I'm
It's
just
like,
trying to survive.
I can't even provide for myself. Verse 8, for Jerusalem stumbled and Judah is fallen. So it's re-emphasizing who this is about. For Jerusalem stumbled and Judah is fallen, but their tongue and their doings are against Yahweh. That's the main problem. They're against Yahweh to provoke the eyes of his glory. How would you say that a different way? To provoke the eyes of his glory.
Make him angry.
Yeah, to make him glare at you.
it's like when a parent looks at a kid and stop doing that.
Right. Stop cutting up in church.
That's what John told me.
The pastor.
No. John Barron's.
Oh yeah, that was his saying. That's what where I got that from.
Stop cutting out.
Stop cutting up. He would get in trouble when he was a kid for cutting up in church. Trying to, playing with his friends and telling him jokes and making him laugh out loud during church.
Oh.
Or doing funny little drawings of the pastor or whatever. Stuff like that. And he became a Bible teacher. Verse 9. So it's, what was 8? What was their problem? What they were, their tongues, because their language, what they're saying, and what they're doing. is against the Lord. Again, you can't make this stuff up. It's like, feels like it's describing modern day. Of course, I heard J. Vernon McGee talking about this, and he thought it was talking about his day. I'm like, that was way better than it is now.
idea.
I'll just wait till my kids' day.
Verse 9, the look on their countenance witnesses against them, their face witnesses against them, their expressions, and they declare their sin as Sodom. Okay, they're doing Sodom and Gomorrah type sins, and they're not ashamed of it. They're not doing it in the backyard anymore. They're doing it in the front yard. They want to be praised for it. They want to have parades.
So they're not being
flags.
hospitable to
They're
people.
proud of their
Pride flags.
deviancy. Yes. And then they hijack the everlasting covenant and put a rainbow on their flags.
Yeah, it's pretty disgusting.
They do not hide it. Woe. This is actually talking about that Judah and Jerusalem were involved in this type of stuff. There's other passages earlier that mentioned there were it's really disgusting, not just prostitutes. I mean, that's sinful enough, but it's not seeking strange flesh. But they also had homosexual temple prostitutes in the temple of God. So that was unnatural and seeking strange flesh, as well as fornication and adultery. And they declare their sin as Sodom. They do not hide it. Woe to their soul. That's what Jesus talked about. What was that one verse? He's don't worry about him who can destroy both body and soul in hell. Don't worry about man.
Who can only destroy your body.
Right, exactly. Woe to their soul, for they have brought evil upon themselves. The Judah might say, well, this is God's fault. He's doing this to us. And it's like, well, yes, he's doing it, but they brought it upon themselves. They deserve this. This is what God said. In fact, they agreed to this. They probably wouldn't think so, but
Back
they
in Deuteronomy?
Yeah, back in Deuteronomy, I think it was around chapter 26, 28. They had the Levites on one mountain, and I don't know, some other group on another mountain, and they were chanting back and forth, and you could hear through this canyon it echoing blessings for obedience and cursings for disobedience. This was the covenant of the law that God made with Israel. So this is cursings for disobedience, for rebellion. Say to the righteous that it shall be well with them, for they shall eat the fruit of their doings. So is God going to just forget about the righteous people that serve him, that didn't rebel? There's a remnant. There's always a remnant of his people. No, God is not going to forsake them, forget about them, abandon them. He says he has a special short little message here for the righteous, because there's only a few of them apparently. Say to the righteous that it shall be well with them, for they shall eat the fruit of their doings. They're going to have food because they served God with their actions. And God's going to take care of them. In contrast, verse 11, woe to the wicked, it shall be ill with him. For the reward of his hands shall be given to him. So God rewards them for their deeds, whether it's the righteous or the wicked. They get what they deserve. For the reward of his hands shall be given to them. I don't think it's God's hands, it's the wicked's hands. What they practice doing is going to come upon their own head. They practiced hurting people, now they're going to be hurt. Verse 12, as for my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them. They have feminine leadership, don't have strong leadership. We already talked about the children running the show and becoming, instead of a blessing in a man's old age, a curse. They're rebellious children. They're oppressing the adults, and women rule over them. These are the signs of a society that's about to implode on itself, and we're doing them all in spades now, more than I've ever seen with any previous administration. O my people, those who lead you cause you to err and destroy the way of your paths. 13. Yahweh stands up to plead and stands to judge the people. Okay, remember we talked about this figurative language before. A lot of people don't understand this or just zip past it, like in the New Testament when Stephen's being stoned and he sees Jesus doing what? He sees heaven opened up. He sees a vision of Jesus as he's being stoned to death by the leadership of Israel. And he sees Jesus doing what?
On the right hand of God? Standing.
Yes, standing at the right hand of God. Not sitting like is normal. Standing. Standing why? Standing to plead. Standing to judge his people. And it's also in the beginning of Revelation. Behold, I stand at the door and knock, knock, knock. And people use that. Oh, that's such a sweet gospel verse. Jesus is wanting to come into your heart.
Get the coloring book pictures of Jesus like
no, I think it's standing in judgment. He's condemning that church or Jewish assembly there.
It's like the police standing at your door and knocking. The response you give is going to have a lot to do with whether this goes well or goes very badly.
Right. And so here it says, Yahweh standing is a sign of judgment coming judgment. I'm actually glad I found that verse because I've thought it was that way, but I didn't have a really strong verse to back it up until now. Just inferences. Verse 14, the Lord will enter into judgment with the elders of his people and his princes, for you have eaten up the vineyard. The plunder of the poor is in your houses. So where does judgment begin? The New Testament, it says judgment begins in the house of the Lord. It begins with his people and his leadership. And it says Yahweh is going to enter into judgment with the elders of his people. Who would that be? Yeah, Israel, Judah, and Jerusalem here. With the elders of his people, that means the leaders, and his princes, the royalty. For you have, probably from the tribe of Judah, for you have eaten up the vineyard. And I'm not sure if this part is literal or figurative here, because Israel is called the vineyard of God sometimes. So it's like they've consumed Israel, the people. They've ruined the people. Or it could be literally they've taken what little food they had, what little crops they had. You have eaten up the vineyard. The plunder of the poor is in your houses. You've taken the last of what people have to survive on, and it's piled up in your houses. So the Lord's going to have
likely both.
Yeah, it could be very well be both. Both make sense, and God says, "I want to have words with you," and that's almost never good, right? When you're doing something wrong and Dad says, "Okay, I don't have time to deal with this now, but later we're gonna have words."
Noah and Phoebe look down in their backs like this.
Put your nose to the grindstone. All right. 15. What do you mean by crushing my people and grinding the faces of the poor? Nose to the grindstone, right there. Grinding the faces of the poor. What do you mean by, you're crushing the people, you're destroying them. Instead of building up the people of God, you're tearing them down.
Sounds like he's asking them like one of those questions where a parent is just like, "What were you thinking?"
Yeah, it's kind of rhetorical.
Why are you
like,
hitting your brother?
like God going into the garden, where are you, Adam and Eve? Like he doesn't know, but it's more to convict them, right? Give them an opportunity to come out and confess their crime. And I missed the last line. Says the Yahweh, this is both here. So we have, says the Lord God of hosts. Lord is, notice that's lowercase for the end. And that's the real word for Lord in Hebrew. The Adonai means Lord or Master.
So this would be Yahweh Adonai of armies.
Well, that's Lord is fine for translation of that first word, Lord or Master. It's Adonai. And then the next word, which is normally translated or printed in our Bibles with capital, all caps, Lord. But it already had the real word for Lord, so we can't substitute Lord, or we might be condemned by Jesus because he said there are many who will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, and I'll say, I never knew you. And it sounds redundant, right? But so here, instead of the normal all caps, Lord, they go God, and normally God would be, I'm sorry if this is too technical and geeky, God would be Elohim or El, but that's not this word here. That would be G lowercase od. And here it's all caps, so it's just like the all caps Lord. It's Yahweh, the sacred name of God, the one that means the I am, the eternal one, the one who causes to be.
Adonai Yahweh of armies, basically, would be a literal.
Yeah, says the Yahweh of army. Says Adonai Yahweh of armies, or says, I like Master Yahweh of armies.
That makes sense.
So this is, I think he's emphasizing that he's the real leader here, not these elders and judges who have ground down the people to powder, to rubble. You heard what their condition was like, no clothes, no food. Zion's haughty women condemned, verse 16. And, the feminists are not going to like this passage, but you know what? God's got some choice words for the men too, so I wouldn't worry about it. Moreover, Yahweh says, because, in other words, in addition to, or, what is it? Amir Sephardi, I can't even say his name, Sephardi. He's a big prophecy guy on YouTube, does a lot of Bible prophecy, and he lives in Israel. He's Jewish and covers events that are going on in the Middle East. Anyway, he, in his last prophecy update that I watched, he kept saying, and if that weren't enough, and then he'd say a few more things. He'd say, and if that weren't bad enough, and then he'd say, and if that weren't enough, he must have said it 6 times during the show. I started noticing it, and that's what this is. Moreover, if that weren't enough, moreover, Yahweh says, because the daughters of Zion are haughty, or what's haughty?
I think
Hot.
too much of themselves.
Hot? No, not hot. You pervert.
They think too much of themselves.
Yeah,
Proud.
high. The idea is high and lifted up. They're proud. Yeah, and walk with outstretched necks and wanton eyes. What does that mean?
Like they want to consume every guy they see, or
Right. Yeah. Think of the word want or lust. It's seductive eyes. The batting the eyes and blinking and giving the wink and all that. walking and mincing as they go, making jingling with their feet. So are they being modest and humble and wanting to give all the attention to God, or they wanting to draw attention to themselves?
Sounds like the makeup wearing person with the above knee skirt and high heels. Sort of.
Yeah, sounds like you're in the Macy's perfume department, right?
Bells on their ankles.
Yeah,
What's that sound?
What's mincing?
I mean, I always thought of chopping garlic.
Minced meat, minced garlic. It's like these little steps, these little tiny steps. They're exaggerated instead of normal walking, and they're prancing. They're prancing. You know how horses prance, do the trot thing. They're prancing. They're wearing super high heels to make their butt stick out and wagging their hips left to right, saying, "Look at this! Look at this!" That's what they're. I mean, it again sounds like America, but this is Israel. This is whatever it was, 700 BC, around there, making jingling with their feet. So what do they have on their ankles?
Bells.
Yeah, bells. They're, it's not just visual, it's not just sparkly, it's sound too. They want everything to draw attention to themselves, and it doesn't sound like it's for righteous purposes. 17, therefore the Lord will strike with a scab the crown of the head of the daughters of Zion. So, was that a blessing or a cursing?
That sounds like a cursing, make them go bald or something.
Yeah, that's a shaming. I mean, what are women proud of?
Hair.
Yeah, their nice hair. God says the long hair is a glory to a woman. It's a glory to a woman. And he's going to judge them by replacing their hair with scabs and baldness. Okay, disease. And Yahweh will uncover their secret parts. I mean, you want to show those off, make everyone look in that direction? Okay, let's shame you all the way. That's what happened when they're taken into Babylonian captivity. They're taken into captivity naked and in chains. They're shamed. Their secret parts are exposed. Verse 18. In that day, Yahweh will take away the finery, the fine clothes, fine jewelry, fine everything, perfume, whatever. The jingling anklets, the scarves, and the crescents.
This is a picture of one of the ancient Egyptian anklets that they found.
Oh, that's pretty fancy.
But yeah, it sounds like it's the little anklets that are
Well,
jingling.
yeah, maybe they learned that in Egypt. They learned a lot of things in Egypt, like how to make a golden calf. It's the jingling anklets, the scarves, and the crescents. I find that interesting, the crescents, because there's another passage. I think maybe it was Gideon or one of the judges. Now I can't remember. We talked about it. Gideon.
Yeah.
That when he, I wish I could remember the details better, but I think he defeated some foes or something, and he took, or maybe he was collecting taxes. Can't remember what, or tribute.
He defeated an army.
Oh, defeated army. Anyway, he took the crescents from their camels, from their horses, these gold moon-shaped things. Well, what religion does that remind you of that has a gold moon?
Wow.
Yeah, Islam. Mohammedism. The Muslims.
Muhammad.
Yeah. That's what Dave Hunt, he always says the Muslims, like they have antlers or something. Well, actually, this isn't that far, because the crescent can symbolize either the moon or the antlers of a cow, which they both is connected with this Canaanite worship. The moon god, the god who, benefits our crops and our cattle.
That
prosperity
makes
and wealth.
sense, because Islam has had a particular strong effect on, seems to coexist with the religions of Hinduism, which is very much into, cow worship and
right? There's other connections like,
Allah was the king or the ruler of the moon.
yeah, he was the moon god,
Yeah.
and of the Arabian pantheon of gods, Muhammad just picked one and said, that's the one true God. We're going to be more like the Christians and Jews, and maybe they'll join us, but if they don't, I'll just kill them all. Let God sort them out. He's the one that started that, not the bikers. So we have, yeah, these crescents, which is a sign of pagan worship. Oh, I did want to mention the sun, moon, and stars are frequently warned against. Don't fear the sun, moon, and stars. Don't do religions associated with the sun, moon, and stars. I mean, we see those every time you go through the grocery store line. There's, oh, get your horoscope read, or your, what's it called? Your astrology. Yeah. Get your fortune read here, or the palm readers, that type of stuff. You see them on.
There's a couple in Kaiser here.
Yep. But the symbol for Islam has a crescent moon and a star. So you're just one item away from the sun, moon, and stars, worshiping associated with the sun, moon, and stars. Verse 19.
Oftentimes the star is within the dark side of the moon area. See, it's like the light's coming from the moon, dark side of the moon. So it's a lie.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, and I'm sure they have some modern, palatable explanation for it, but I think if you go way back, you're going to find connections with an idol, a moon god idol.
Yeah.
And
It's Saturnalia.
oh, that's who the star represents?
Well, in some traditions it's Saturn and the moon's conjunction, but in others it's Venus and the moon.
Okay. Yeah, so it's showing the importance of the moon lining up with a certain planet.
Right.
And that's how they tell those horoscope. That's what it's called. Oh, here's your horoscope. Little booklets they sell for $5 or whatever, and it'll say, "Oh, don't go out today, or you'll die of COVID," or it might say the sun will come up tomorrow, and it's a very good day to ask for a promotion.
Or
Just
something
it's
like,
like fortune cookie nonsense.
And don't they usually give really vague things?
Yeah,
like
it's super vague that could apply to lots of things.
big things are coming your way.
Right. Take every opportunity today, and something crazy will happen. Yeah, I lost my job. Verse 18, we're in Isaiah 3:18. In that day, Yahweh will take away the finery, the jingling anklets, the scarves and the crescents. Sorry, I already read that, 19. The pendants, the bracelets, and the veils. So more of their fancy, elaborate, expensive clothing that they piled on.
For veils, mine says mufflers.
Mufflers, yeah. That's what are those, like the double hand warmer thing? There's all kinds of different translations you could get.
Oh,
more
I was
modern
thinking something
ones.
over the mouth, like a muff.
Yeah, I don't know.
Veil.
Well, it probably means veils since it's translated veils in this one. Bracelets and veils. One of them means what?
no more car mufflers for you.
Well, I think one of them means girdles too, which is that's the sucking in of the gut. Make you look skinnier. But God's going to give them just the opposite of what they're trying to accomplish with these things.
I wish they'd take my muffler away. I don't want to wear it anymore.
20. The headdresses, the leg ornaments, the headbands, the perfume boxes, the charms. What are charms used for?
Like spells or
Yeah, spells, divinations, like
crystal therapy.
little bracelet idols for good luck. Oh, yeah, this one's the evil eye. It keeps the evil eye away.
That's a fetish.
Yeah, it's a superstition. So we have all these things: headdresses, leg ornaments. And that might indicate that the legs are showing, because you can't see the ornaments very well without the legs showing. And the headbands, the perfume boxes, the charms, and the rings, the nose jewels. I mean,
I see a lot of like young girls who get this single nose stud. No offense if anyone has family who has these, but I just. Okay. Okay, yeah, I'm good now.
You couldn't see the other side of your nose. Are you looking at Grandma Fern's nose?
Yeah, just making sure, you know.
She doesn't.
It's empty.
But you know, it's interesting.
Well, on non-church days, she does that ball ring thing.
You're a tin
Notice-
pipe, but-
Her ears are covered. She's got gauges in
sorry.
there.
And wears bells on her ankles. Just kidding. She wouldn't do that.
Probably sell them and get a
Those
lot of money
fancy
for those.
socks, though.
Yeah, but it's interesting because one girl at camp got one of those nose studs, and then it's like the next year, like 12 others.
Oh, that's okay.
You know, yeah.
Can't you-
Or no, this was in Cannon View. This was another camp.
Okay.
And it seemed like all their mothers got them. So it's just like
Well, if their mothers are getting them, that explains.
The mothers got them after the kids or before
it
the
seemed
kids?
like it. Like the mothers got them after. I didn't understand it.
Trying to stay young forever, I guess. So you have all these expensive, fancy things to decorate the body, to draw attention, and the rings, the nose jewels, the festal apparel. What's the festal?
Like the seat like festivals.
Right, for feasts or festivals, dress up for a party, and the mantles or mantles.
Head.
Like a cloak.
Yeah, it's like a cloak, kind of like that cape with a hood thing, Robin Hood. So Elijah, see, what was it? Elisha, I think, asked for Elijah's mantle, which was a symbol. The prophets wore these hairy mantles, hairy cloaks.
So it was like a fur cloak.
Fur, yeah, like they look like trappers, probably.
Didn't Moses wear one because his face was too?
He put a veil over his face. After he would go talk with God, his face would be glowing, and the people couldn't stand just the reflected glory of God, the lingering glory of God in his skin. So they said, please veil yourself, cover yourself up. We don't want the glory of God. And
Scares us.
yeah, and they didn't want God to talk to them directly either. He started to, but it was so fearsome that they're like, no, we trust you to tell us what he says, Moses. You just go talk with him. So we have 22, the festal apparel, the mantles, the outer garments, the purses. You know, we got to have the Gucci purses. That, you know, and one for every outfit, not just one purse for all day long. We have the party purse, we have the glimmer purse, we have the mace purse, we have the taser purse. Wait, where's our taser girl? No, Emma's not here today. Verse 23. And the mirrors, the fine linen, the turbans, and the robes. So, you think of those little makeup mirrors, right? But I don't know, apparently they're obsessed with mirrors. Why? Well, they've got to decorate themselves. It takes a lot of work to look natural.
Especially in a
Takes
culture like
hours.
that where I mean, you know, mirrors weren't as readily available as they are today.
Right, they were hard to make too because you had to polish brass till it reflected your image, and it's not easy to go from rough metal to coarse scratches to polishing. You have to go through a lot of steps. It probably took a month to make a mirror of an artisan. And then it would be expensive, and yet these women have multiple mirrors. A mirror, that's like, you know, it's probably $1,000 item, not like us going to the Dollar Tree.
Be like a year wages or something.
Yeah.
Jesse was showing me how to put on makeup, and I'm like, man, that's a lot of work for.
Yeah, and I didn't even put on that
She
much
was
because
helping
I
you
don't
put
know-
on makeup.
No, I was showing him
TMI.
myself putting on makeup.
She was showing me how to put on makeup.
She was showing me how she put on makeup.
Oh, that's a different story.
Yeah, phrase it more clearly, Chris.
Lipstick just takes a long time to put on.
Yeah,
Wow.
There's a reason I don't
Well, if you
usually
do
wear
it sloppily, it just doesn't look good.
Well, unless you've been kissing, then it's fine.
I do not like the way this conversation is going.
Yeah, she was talking about her children earlier. I'm just wondering if there's going to be news. Never mind.
We'll let you know. We'll let you know.
What was that? Was that a hint?
It was a hint that he's hoping that someday he will have a child.
Day my
Or
prince
30.
will come.
Something like
And
that.
hopefully not all at once. Verse 23. And the mirrors and the fine linen, the turbans and the robes. So fine linen, I don't know if that's clothing or those Egyptian bed sheets. The with all that thread count that everyone's concerned about. The 200 thread count. The
630.
I just like it if the cotton feels good, not like stretchy t-shirt material. Like thin, stretchy t-shirt material. I hate that in bed sheets.
When I was growing up, if we had a matching sheets, that was considered a luxury.
Oh yeah, yeah, that is.
High class.
I mean, growing up in your house, if you couldn't see straight through the sheets, that was a luxury.
It's
Some of
true.
the ones we took out of that closet.
I have holes in my sheet. How many? 6. Not enough.
It is still cover at least half the mattress.
Your brother has more. So the fine linen, the turbans, and the robes. Sometimes we see a guy going down the street with a turban.
Oh, the
he's
chic guys or whatever.
Yeah, he's a Hindu.
Hindu. Oh,
Yeah, Hindu.
Could be Sikh.
Yes, probably Sikh. Isn't that Hindu?
I think they're different.
They're
Yes.
different from it, but they're from similar regions.
Anyway, what I hear is they
They're
don't.
from the Punjab.
The men, for religious reasons, they don't ever cut their hair. They just twist it up and wind it in that turban. So they've got I don't know, really long hair under there.
So if you have like a 90-year-old guy, he might have something like that.
Yeah, what do you have? Yeah, I'm like, you have 9 feet of hair under there?
You ever seen pictures of Suleiman the Magnificent? His little head and a big turban,
From saving up all the hair?
I guess.
Yeah, the weird
Or from pillow stuffing.
pillow stuffing.
Yeah, maybe that's how he got his turban so big.
Yeah,
I just
well,
figured they were those aliens from Star Trek who had the big.
see these, super
That was
brains.
from the original
These,
show.
yeah, I remember that one. These.
Before William Shatner.
But you see what these other religions, how they twist and make everything the opposite. They call what God calls evil, they call good. It's a shame for a man to have long hair. And what they say, no, it's a holy blessing thing. Or
Long hair and head covered.
maybe they borrowed something from the ancient, not the Levite, what's that vow thing? Nazarite vow. Maybe it's some sort of perversion of that, but the norm in Scripture, especially New Testament, is it's an honor for a woman to have long hair, and it's a
Shame for me.
shameful for a man to have long hair. That's the standard. That's why it was traditional. That's why men would take off hats at sacred events, and women would have head coverings on. You see that in all the old church pictures, say from 60 years ago. I've seen black and white pictures, the back of just average churches, and it'll be you can just count them. And this was when fedoras and men having hats was very popular. Men would always wear their hats to work. And even, blue collar labor jobs, they would still wear a nice hat to work. And where was I going with this? Anyway, the picture in the church is all the women had hats or head coverings, and all the men had their heads uncovered. Wow. Everyone, whether it's old Mennonite churches or almost anything else, Baptists. That's the way it always was. In fact, Kim's mom said it used to be that when she was a girl, a woman her mom would never go out in public without a head covering.
Wow.
So you have the festal apparel and the mantles, the outer garments, the purses and the mirrors and the fine linen, the turbans and the robes. I'm repeating because I fell back. 24, and so it shall be, instead of a sweet smell, there shall be a stench. So what did they have before?
Perfumes and
Yeah,
stuff.
perfume boxes. That's how they covered, that's what they did instead of to deodorant You know, it's like spraying that old nasty rose spray that some people have in their bathrooms. And so you stink up the bathroom and then you spray it's a can with roses on it and you spray that. And that's supposed to make it better. But it just smells like poopy roses now.
And candles work well.
Yeah, it's, citrus. Yeah, I think the citrus sprays work, and they're not terribly bad for you like the petroleum type stuff.
At
I
camp,
like citrus smell.
the guys, to get the sweat smell out of the cabins, would just spray Axe a lot of the time all in there. and
Oh,
it would
that's
just-
so horrible. I have nightmares about that stuff. That is the nastiest stuff.
It is horrible.
It's torture. I have lung damage from that stuff.
Rather take a 3-hour shower than use it.
Oh, that's what guys do. Skip the shower and go, make a big cloud of the stuff, and then walk out of it coughing. When I worked, I did supervise in the locker room or take special ed kids down there and wait for them to change, get ready for PE, and these guys, there's no ventilation down there. There's no air circulation. There's no windows. And they're making clouds of this stuff everywhere. And I'm stuck in there for a half hour. I can't wait to get out and breathe.
Just bring a portable oxygen.
Yeah, I need an oxygen mask. It was awful. Yeah, don't use Axe. Use normal deodorant stick. Be normal. Be normal, people. Be
Old
men.
Spice.
Yes, Old Spice or Arm & Hammer. That's the only kinds.
Coconut oil baking powder.
Can't afford that, I guess there's Dollar Tree. And
$1 plus.
Oh yeah, now it's $1 plus.
Really?
Or they're charging more than $1 in
Yeah.
like California and New York now because inflation.
Things.
And so it shall be, instead of well, you know what the stores used to be called?
Nickel
5
and
and
dime.
dime.
5 and Dimes. Yeah, Woolworths, 5 and Dime, and then when
That's when a nickel actually bought something.
I suppose when I was a baby, they changed it to just Woolworths and dropped the 5 and Dime because they couldn't keep everything under a dime anymore.
Wish.
And so for 24, and so it shall be, instead of a sweet smell, there shall be a stench. So God's replacing their perfume with stink, like dead fish smell. Instead of a sash, a rope. So what does that imply?
They're becoming slaves.
Yeah, slaves, bondage. I was thinking a rope around their waist. Instead of a nice sash, we don't really do sashes much anymore, but think cummerbund on a tuxedo. Sash. Instead of a sash, a rope. Instead of a well-set hair, baldness. And we already saw that because of
Didn't
the...
they shave slaves' heads too?
Yeah, I believe so.
of lice.
They shamed them. They shaved their heads. They took their clothes. They put them in chains or ropes, hooks in their jaws or noses, even to connect them together.
But they just put it around their necks.
COVID friendly, of course. Instead of a rich robe, a girding of sackcloth. So you think of, that's pretty much what Jesus did when he washed the disciples' feet. He humbled himself like a slave, and he put just a wrap around his waist because he's going to be getting wet, splashing, washing all the disciples' feet. That's how a servant dresses and behaves. A servant has no honor. A servant has no clothes. A servant has no name. That type of thing.
In most of the movies about Jesus, they don't actually show that part. And I saw one that actually, had Jesus get down in that robe. Like, that's not in the Bible. And I go and look, I'm like, oh, this is the accurate version.
Instead of a rich robe, a girdling of sackcloth. That's the cheapest, most itchy, uncomfortable clothes you can get. Think burlap potato bag sacks. That's your clothing. I remember hearing a story of slavery. I can't remember what book it was in, but there was a family, and the of course, they were black. It was slavery in America. I mean, there's been lots of kinds of slaveries and races all over the place. People don't seem to know that anymore. But anyway, the older brother was being kind to the younger brother. His mom made a new hair shirt, I think it was called, or like burlap sack shirt, and they were very itchy and uncomfortable. So his brother, the older brother, gives his younger brother his shirt to wear, which is all broken in and soft now, not itchy anymore, and takes the itchy one and breaks it in for his brother. Takes the month of itchiness. It's like a prison sentence or something. That type of clothing, and branding instead of beauty. And well, a lot of people think branding is beauty today, right? They have, don't they have branding
Tattoos.
shops? Yeah, tattoo parlors. They have these, you show off your midriff, or a young woman shows off her midriff and does a little butterfly fairy sticking halfway out in the middle of her back by her tailbone, so that everyone will look in that direction, and some people affectionately call it a tramp stamp.
It reminds me of that. There was a Far Side comic where this cowboy brings out this branding iron. It's like this massive thing that's like 3 feet long that says "Property of Doug" on it. And the cows are in the
Cows are all
background
running away.
freaking out.
Yep. Well, what did branding mean back then, though?
Like
Ownership.
Ownership of slaves. You would brand a slave or tattoo a slave. That's what they did to the Jews during the Holocaust. There's a few of them still alive that have these long numbers tattooed on their forearms, because they weren't people. They were just numbers to them, like the tags on a cattle, number tags on their ear. And that's what the Antichrist is going to do. He's going to mark everyone. I own you. You worship me. You pick sides. You want to live. You want to have food. You want to buy and sell. You pick me. You get the mark on your hand or your forehead. Then you can buy and sell like they do in Switzerland. There's like 20,000 people there with chips, and they buy pop cans out of the machine with them or whatever. Do almost everything with their chips. Just scan it.
Wow.
They're used to it. And branding
People
instead
have their
of
phones now.
beauty. Earphones?
No, phones.
Yeah, you can do it with phones too. Verse 25, your men shall fall by the sword, and your mighty men in the war. So that's important. And see, it sounds like, oh, there's a lot against the women, but there's only a short thing against the men, right? Well, which is worse, though? The men are
Men
dying.
There's a lot to say about what happens to the women because they're still there. The men, they're just dead. There's not much to say.
Right. You're actually, well, now that I think about it, this sounds like a further punishment on the women, because it's your men shall fall by the sword. I'm sure the men deserve it too. They're being wicked. But your men shall fall by the sword, and your mighty in the war. So they're doing all this stuff to attract attention, attract men, and what does God take away from them?
Their men.
The clothing, the beauty, the smell, the men, the hair, everything. Your men shall fall by the sword, and your mighty in the war. It doesn't matter if he's highly skilled warrior. He's going down, because God's not fighting for him. He's fighting against him. He's supporting the Babylonians. I believe this is pointing to the Babylonian invasion, and also to the circumstances during the tribulation, the Antichrist siege of Judea.
I think the prophet said in Judah several times, like, if you go and you serve them, then it'll be a lot better for you than if you resist.
Right.
So I think it's just like this idea that a lot of this is consequences that happened because of disobedience and defiance of God.
Right.
Like spit in your face type
Yeah,
defiance.
it might be Isaiah later on, or one of the others, but it says, when the Syrians or Babylonians, I think it was the Babylonians, come, basically yield to them, Just cooperate and do what they say, and because God's not going to give you this victory. Don't fight them. Don't try and run away from them. Just go into your prison sentence, your punishment. You're going to Babylon, and it'll be okay. And I'll let you, well, maybe not all you guys, but I'll let you guys go in 70 years. And then the land can have its 70 year of rest that you didn't give it by not doing crops every 7 years. 26, her gates shall lament and mourn, and she, being desolate, being barren, empty, shall sit on the ground. So what's she? I think it's Judah.
Well, is it the women that are, like, because it was talking about the women. Oh, wait, her gates shall lament and mourn.
Maybe Jerusalem.
Yeah, probably the gates of Jerusalem. Her gates shall lament and mourn, and she, being desolate, being destroyed, razed to the ground, shall sit in the ground. And the picture is, I think it's kind of an allegorical picture of a woman, like imagine one of those bombed cities of Syria or something, just rubble everywhere, sitting in ashes, half naked, with nothing,
Kind of
just
reminds me
waiting to die. It's that type of humble imagery. She's been thoroughly humbled,
like that Scarlett O'Hara from Gone with the Wind.
brought low.
She comes home and like an entire town is destroyed in ashes.
Let's see. Yep, I guess we'll start at chapter 4 next time. A vision of the coming kingdom. Actually, I want to read verse 1 because this is one of the parts where I believe verse 1 actually goes with chapter 3, the previous chapter. A vision of the coming kingdom. And in that day, 7 women shall take hold of one man, saying, we will eat our own food and wear our own apparel. Only let us be called by your name to take away our reproach. What's reproach?
Or disgrace, suffering.
Disgrace, shame. Yes. And why would 7 women be grabbing one man?
Would
Because
this
there's not that many men left.
Right. He just said, your men shall fall by the sword. There's a huge shortage of men.
so would this be specifically Israelite men?
Yeah, this is in Judah. Well, it says in that day, which I think is pointing to the coming tribulation time, when what it's going to be like. And it could have happened in Babylon situation too, because they destroy a lot of the men who are fighting. So what's left? Serious shortage of men and a lot of women, which is the opposite in China, though. And I'm not sure if this is talking about marriage or not. I assume so. And the shame of being childless, and these women are willing to tolerate. Normally, do women want to share a man?
No.
No, they don't like the idea of polygamy. But here, it's like they're so desperate, they're under such judgment that 7 women will take hold of one man and say, you don't even need to provide for us. Just give us your last name, maybe a few children, and we'll work and provide for ourselves. You don't have to provide for us. Just let us have your last name. Let us be in your tribe. And we'll provide our own clothes. You don't have to do anything for us. Just give us your name and we'll take care of the rest. You just only let us be called by your name to take away our reproach. So I think that goes with the idea of the previous chapter where the men, your mighty men, are falling by the sword. So we'll pick up Isaiah chapter 4 next time. He'll go on more about what's going to happen in that day and at that time, the day of the Lord, the tribulation.
Sounds a little more uplifting than what we just read.
And the kingdom. Yeah, I think it does get into some good news.
Oh, that's a short chapter.
Yeah, it is. I was thinking about doing it today, but I'll combine it with the next one. And I don't know. I'm trying to end on chapter breaks, but I probably won't be able to next
Since
time.
4's so
Because
short and 5's
4's
so long.
tiny and 5's super long. So we'll probably have to stop in the middle of 5. And we'll just try and stop on time. Father in heaven, thank you for this time in your word, a time which we can see your righteousness and justice and how you discipline your people and how you care for them and restore them. In Jesus Christ's name we pray, amen.
Amen. Is there a memory verse
Yeah, that's what I was
today?
just thinking. You guys ready? Yes, yes. Stand up. Stand up,
Stand up for Jesus, ye soldiers of the cross. And so what we have learned applies to our lives today.
Romans 4:19 through 22. And not being weak in faith, he did not consider his own body already dead, since he was about 100 years old, and the deadness of Sarah's womb. He did not waver at the promise of God through unbelief, but was strengthened in faith, giving glory to God, and being fully convinced that what he had promised he was also able to perform. And therefore it was accounted to him for righteousness. Romans 4:19 through 22.
Woo! Really good.